On this day, 1993, Searching for Bobby Fischer opens in theaters, and despite unanimous, rapturous critical praise, the film bombs at the box office before finding its audience on home video and cable. And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. As you see, we've changed the backdrop. We're outdoors. We finally have a glorious day, so far, here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode, if you can take your eyes off the, if I may say, the very nice landscape and backdrop that I have behind me. I missed the movie posters, but people in the house are sleeping. We'll let them sleep, and here we are. So today marks the 31st anniversary of the release of one of my favorite films ever. A movie that shares certain parallels with one of your, I'm betting, favorite films, regardless of who might be picking up on this episode, Shawshank Redemption, which was released the following year in 1994. So Shawshank, as some of you know, not all, was a movie that got terrific reviews when it landed, but absolutely bombed at the box office, despite the strength of the reviews. And Shawshank found its audience starting in the following year, in February to be specific, with the announcement of the Oscar nominations for movies released in 1994. Shawshank seemed to come out of nowhere and got a boatload of nominations. Didn't win any, but that got people like me, who was at the time a junior in New York University Cinema Studies Department, Tisch School of the Arts, and people like me who had been dismissive of the film when it played in theaters, couldn't pronounce the title. You know, there's a lot of jokes. Morgan Freeman even and Tim Robbins joked about that. But as much as we can agree, somebody like me, somebody like you, that the Oscars are often a popularity contest, it's bullshit, they never get it right. When a movie receives a boatload of Oscar nominations, it is almost always at least indicative that it is a quality piece of work, that if the subject matter is interesting to you, it's worth seeing. I think almost everyone would agree on that. So Shawshank then, of course, went on to find its audience on home video and cable, and is now one of the most beloved films of all time. Well, the previous year, about 13 months before Shawshank landed in September of 1994, a movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer opened in theaters. It was a literary adaptation. Now, oddly enough, the writer-director Steven Zaillian also did yeoman's work, and I'm not exaggerating. The same year, he was responsible for the final draft screenplay for Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List, which, as we know, it's almost secondary or tertiary that it won so many awards, is a very important film. And often when filmmakers make important films or call importance to the work they're trying to do, it backfires. But Spielberg, who had already formed the Shoah Foundation, I'm not going to explain what that is, you can Google it, but Spielberg had already formed the Shoah Foundation. And as a Jewish American, that was near and dear to his heart, and the story of Oskar Schindler and what ended up happening in that horrific scenario, in that precise, specific scenario of what Oskar Schindler was able to do. The movie really made a splash. It's not the kind of film you would ever expect to be a significant box office hit. It doesn't have much rewatchability, to be perfectly honest, but it is a film that, it's a story that needed to be told, and I'm grateful because Spielberg, it seems absurd, was not the first person who got a crack at Schindler's List. Scorsese had to pass first. Steven Zaillian wrote the screenplay and worked very closely with Spielberg on the script. He also, as that was going on, wrote and directed, Steven Zaillian we're talking about, not the other Steven Spielberg I just mentioned, a literary adaptation, a book adaptation of a kind of autobiographical memoir by a man named Fred Waitzkin, who wrote for the New York Times. He did the kind of lifestyle Sunday Times stuff. So he was kind of a sports columnist, but he was never, I don't believe, was ever a Yankees beat reporter, although a big Yankee fan, and his son was a big Yankee fan. But Fred Waitzkin wrote a book called Searching for Bobby Fischer about his son, who at age 6, the first time he sat down to play chess, was already operating at a level just shy of Grandmaster. Which is out of context. If you don't understand prodigies, it's impossible. Well, if you saw the movie Good Will Hunting, we're talking about the same kind of thing, but in the world of Searching for Bobby Fischer, we're just talking about chess. Now, somebody who is brilliant at chess, somebody who is a home run hitter of a chess player, is usually really, really intelligent. Albert Einstein was a good chess player. Stanley Kubrick, the famous filmmaker who supposedly had an IQ equal to that of Einstein and Curie and Oppenheimer, he was a great chess player. Well, Fred Waitzkin wrote a book about his son, who ended up being like the junior national champion. His son's name was Josh. And the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer is about a family dealing with the ramifications of having a child, a small boy, who is so good at something he has no business being this good at. And what do you do? What is the best course of action? And there's not really an answer to that. Each family that goes through this, and it could be tennis, Jennifer Capriati, by the time she was 9, beat the best 12-year-old female tennis players in the country. Jennifer Capriati was a prodigy like Josh Waitzkin, not in chess, in tennis. In her case, there was a sense that her father was overbearing and that she was pushed too hard, too fast. She burned out. But fortunately for history, Jennifer Capriati was able to recapture the magic well into her 20s. And if she didn't have the career that she should have, being such a spectacular talent, that at age 9, she was just beating the shit out of everybody, she still had a career worthy of her talent. And Searching for Bobby Fischer, the movie, was a low budget. So I'm getting to the budget and box office, and I just wanted to give you the backstory here. Searching for Bobby Fischer, I'll skip past the chase and get right to the outcome, as Jack Nicholson famously said. The movie had a budget of no more than $13 million, despite having a home run slam bang cast of Joe Mantegna, the amazing Sir Ben Kingsley, future multiple Oscar nominee Joan Allen, David Paymer, who had been an Oscar nominee the previous year for Mr. Saturday Night, future Oscar nominee William H. Macy. The cast is stupendous, and I almost forgot Oscar nominee Lawrence Fishburne. So they were able to get all of these talented people who normally would be making into the millions, 2 million, 3 million, just for a movie. They were able to get all of these people to work for not much more than scale. Because if you do the math, how could the budget be as low as it is with all of these big hitters and people? And Lawrence Fishburne was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, that year for What's Love Got to Do with It. So the fact that you got him and his role is critical to the story. So we meet Fred Waitzkin and his wife, played beautifully by Joan Allen. Joan Allen's so good in this movie. A number of months ago, I did an episode for my most underrated movie performances series. And Joan Allen is basically the underrated star, the all-star, the powerhouse of this film. Because she, and we're not expecting it, because it has the hallmarks of this is going to be a thankless role, and it isn't. She forms the emotional core and the center of the movie. And man, does she hit a fucking home run. I think she's amazing. I thought she should have won Best Actress for The Contender a number of years later. She is a great actress. Whether in big action movies such as Face Off, or in the quieter dramas like The Ice Storm with Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver and Tobey Maguire, among others, she's amazing. But Searching for Bobby Fischer deals with all of the sports parenting tropes and cliches, but it does it differently. It does it in a way that feels fresh, and it takes what is probably the least cinematic, I hate to use the phrase sport, chess isn't a sport, but let's pretend it's a sport. It takes the least cinematic sport/activity/game and somehow makes it entertaining and fun and exciting. I never played chess. I was the sort of kid you would expect, especially growing up before the video game boom, you would have expected that I would have been a chess player, played checkers. I was really good at checkers. I played Scrabble. I was really good at Scrabble. I never played chess. But even as somebody who doesn't really understand it, I can throw words knight, rook, bishop, mate the queen. I could throw words. I know nothing of chess. And honestly, I have no interest in ever learning how to play competitive chess. But I can tell you that this movie, the way it deals with it, they give you just enough information about chess so that you can follow the various games. But they don't overburden you with jargon that people like myself, and maybe yourself, wouldn't understand. And it's something the movie Rounders, which is about poker, and Matt Damon in a kind of almost wink, wink, nudge, nudge nod to his previous big role in Good Will Hunting. He plays a guy who's not that intelligent, but when it comes to poker, he's a bit of a savant. He is naturally an incredibly gifted poker player, reading people, and obviously he knows all the odds, and his brain is... If Will Hunting has a 200 IQ, Mike McDermott, the character Matt Damon plays in Rounders, probably got 150. So he's brilliant, but he's brilliant within normal parameters. Whereas Will Hunting is probably the smartest man to ever live in the history of the universe. I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. Once Josh Waitzkin starts to play chess, everything changes not only for him, but for his family. And Joe Mantegna he's actually in the thankless role. It's kind of an interesting twist on the usual situation where you have a spouse, almost always the wife, in a movie such as this, where a spouse ends up just having a role where it's nothing but shit being piled on them, and they really don't get to do that much. Joe Mantegna's character takes a lot of actions, which we can then take issue with, but he has the thankless role in this film. Joan Allen gets to kind of drive the train of the family, even though it appears to be Fred Waitzkin making most of the decisions or directing Josh. Ultimately, her rules, her word is what it comes down to. And she, as much as she loves her son, she wants her son to achieve. She's not going to let anybody turn him into something other than the innately decent, kind, wonderful child that he is. Regardless of, well, he could achieve chess glory, he could do... She even says it. Any of you tries to take that away from him, I'm going to take him, and we are gone. We are gone. So, for a movie that doesn't have screaming matches, it doesn't have people yelling at one another very much, it doesn't have threats of violence, this is not that movie. This is a film about balance versus not balance. And we know that maybe you've seen movies or learned about the school spelling bee where you have parents quizzing their kids on thousands of words for 10 hours a day for a couple of years. And you say to yourself, is it really worth it? And what Searching for Bobby Fischer does, without talking down or pandering, and without necessarily taking sides, because the real Fred Waitzkin and the real Bruce Pandolfini, that's the character of the brilliant chess coach, played so well by Sir Ben Kingsley. Man, Ben Kingsley was everywhere in 1993. Not only did he do this movie, which is a masterpiece, he plays the vice president in Dave with Kevin Kline, which is an absolute masterpiece, and he was nominated for supporting actor for Schindler's List, another movie which is a fucking masterpiece. Kingsley was incredible in all three of those films. He has the smallest role in Dave, and that's a little bit of a thankless role. He doesn't show up till the end of the film, but we get enough of the character to understand why Kevin Kline as Dave Kovic takes the actions he does at the end of the film. And it's the sort of role it needed an actor of his stature. And one thing with Ben Kingsley, he never coasts on who he is. He never takes it easy or takes a film off just because he has the title Sir. Whether he's playing the fake Mandarin in Iron Man 3, whether he's playing the vice president, whether he's playing fucking lunatic genius in the movie Sneakers, which was the previous year, 1992. He always brings it. And he is so good as chess coach Bruce Pandolfini, where you get how badly he wants this kid to do great, and he will push him past the point where you really should. He is, after all, 7 years old. You can't talk to him like he's a college kid in the movie Whiplash. Not okay. And you get all of these conceptual ideas, which are technically about sports, about activity, about competition, where there's also no right answer. Do you play a protective game? Do you play an aggressive game? In chess, that translates to, do you ever bring your queen out early, or do you always play with an eye towards defense? And Lawrence Fishburne's character, he's one of those, and I used to see it's almost ridiculous, but when I was at New York University, it was right around this time. I got there a little bit after this film came out, 94. There were so many people playing chess in Washington Square Park, and that's where the character of Josh sees a game of chess for the first time and plays. And that's where he gets his start. And Lawrence Fishburne plays Vinny, who is a brilliant, fantastic chess player. He plays at Washington Square Park. He's an aggressive player. He's an attacker. In boxing, he would be a swarmer. He would be called a swarmer. In boxing, the Bruce Pandolfini method, he would be a scientific fighter. And both guys have Josh's ear. And Josh does not want to disrespect either his friend Vinny or his coach. But at the same time, everyone has to let him do what he will instinctively do, because he's so talented. He's such a great chess player. Naturally, his instincts are so on point. The synapses connect so quickly during games. It's kind of freakish. There's a moment, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but there's a moment towards the end of the film where Josh is playing a final match for this championship. And it feels like the seventh game of the World Series, the Super Bowl. This is just their children who are geniuses, specifically at chess. And you can still see the kind of philosophical divide between Lawrence Fishburne's Vinny and Sir Ben Kingsley's Bruce. The kid is getting ready to make a move where he's going to pull his queen out early in the game. Lawrence Fishburne goes, "Bring her out." Sir Ben Kingsley says, "Don't do it. Don't even think about it." And the way this sequence plays out is based on what really happened. But it shows that you don't have to do one thing. You don't have to play one way. You can blend styles. And in a different context, if you're a fan of the TV series Cobra Kai, you notice and you can tell, and it's a big thing in the show, you don't have to just try to be like Mr. Miyagi. You can incorporate other tactics. You can be more aggressive. You don't always, as much as Daniel LaRusso says, I'm never throwing the first punch. There are times where waiting and holding back might cost you a fight. And in the case of Searching for Bobby Fischer, bringing out the queen early in a game where you're already losing, it feels like chess suicide. But maybe it's such an unconventional move, it will throw your opponent off his game because, now wait a second, what the fuck did I miss? You know, the 7 or 8 year old kid version of what the fuck did I miss? How could he be bringing his queen out now? Did I miss something? And then the gears begin to turn and you can get thrown off just a little bit. Also, like in the movie Rounders, when Matt Damon finally spots Teddy KGB's tell with the Oreos, he knows it's going to disrupt him, and he does not do that in a conventional way. He more or less throws it back in Teddy's face and is able to capitalize in a way that we don't expect. In the world of this film, Josh serving both of his mentors, it is so beautiful to see the way both Vinny and Bruce come together in this moment when they realize what's about to happen. And Sir Ben Kingsley has a moment in this film. It is a top 10 greatest movie moments for me. That's how important this film is when I think of great movies, and how quickly I am, you know, like we say, we hate it when somebody hates one of our favorite movies. It hurts us. It hurts us in the marrow if we recommend, this is my favorite film of all time, bro, it's a fucking snooze fest. Towards the end of this movie, there is a moment where Josh has unnerved his opponent, and his opponent, who is this kind of scary, I mean, the kid's like 8 years old and he's like intimidating, he's a little guy. But his opponent has become unnerved because of Josh's unconventional, but still tactical play. It's not like Josh is just fucking around. kid makes a mistake. And even though he has way more pieces, he had been carving Josh up early in the game. Bruce looks at the board and says, it's there. It's there. It's 12 moves away, but it's there. And he hopes against hope that Josh will see it, will take his time, will not rush to make a good move which could help him win the game, but make the right move, the correct move to begin the domino effect, the sequencing which will enable him to win. In other words, there is a sequence where if Josh makes this move right here, no matter what his opponent does in response, in 11 more moves, Josh will checkmate and he will win the championship. And Ben Kingsley, as only he can, he repeats the phrase, don't move until you see it. And it's something that he had taught him and told him in a more paternal, not a sort of angry coach, what are you doing mode. There are going to be moments in a match where you need to take an extra minute, where the end game is right in front of you. Don't move until you see it. And then Ben looks at the kids, because they're all watching it on TV screens. They're not allowed into the room. They're watching the final match on TV screens. And Josh makes a move. And by the way, Max Pomeranc, who plays Josh, phenomenal. Absolutely incredible. It feels like the real kid. Josh does a movement with his eyes, and all of a sudden Ben Kingsley smiles and says, he's got it. And he has such a look of joy on his face, because he knows the kid that he mentored, that he had these hopes for. He's going to win. He's going to win the national championship. Now, one other thing with Ben in this film is that while he was in the mode of pushing Josh too hard to where Joan Allen as the mom is like, fucking lay off my kid, or you're not going to ever see him again either, he tried to instill in Josh, you want to hate your opponents. You need to feel contempt for them. And Josh can't. He's a sweet, a kind, and compassionate little boy. He doesn't have it in him, and he doesn't want to learn how to hate his opponents. So we come to the end, and there is a moment where I have to spoil this, where Josh, because I just said that he figured out the end game, he sticks his paw out to his opponent. Doesn't say anything. He just sticks out his hand. And Lawrence Fishburne turns to Ben Kingsley. He says, what does that mean? And Ben Kingsley, with a look of immense pride, says, he's offering him a draw. Almost that he can't believe it. And he can't believe that he's happy that he's offering him a draw, that he doesn't hate his opponent. He's offering to share the championship with his opponent. And as he says to the kid, take the draw. Please, take the draw. We share the championship. Well, whether or not the kid takes the draw isn't the point. It's the fact that Josh Waitzkin offered it, that he did not hate his opponent, that he was willing to share the championship with this kid who was trying to carve him up at the chess table, intimidate him. No. Take the draw. Searching for Bobby Fischer is available it's streaming on Paramount Plus and Showtime. I know that it's been on Netflix. The way that these things work, when The Queen's Gambit was just tearing it up on Netflix, mysteriously Searching for Bobby Fischer dropped, and a lot of people saw it. It ran on Netflix for about 3 months, but a lot of people who had never seen the movie before suddenly had an opportunity, and not surprisingly, holy shit, this is amazing. Searching for Bobby Fischer has a perfect score, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is as rare as it gets. Even Best Picture winners, even all-time classics, don't score 100. That is how beloved this film is. Even though it's still somewhat underseen, I would say, it's not like Shawshank where so many people discovered it. But Searching for Bobby Fischer is a wonderful film. It has a heartfelt, heartwarming, uplifting message where it is possible to achieve greatness and still have at least a semblance of a normal life. You can be the best chess player in the country and still play baseball and go outside, maybe shoot some hoops, maybe play a little softball. You don't have to do it 100% of the time. It's okay to be a kid. Searching for Bobby Fischer, written and directed by Steven Zaillian, released on this day, 1993, starring Joan Allen, Max Pomeranc, Joe Mantegna, Sir Ben Kingsley, William H. Macy, and David Paymer. This has been episode 273 of the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast, first outdoor episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you check this episode out on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any of the other platforms we're available on, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.